We
You
moved to the
guys,
cloud
I'm on the.
server.
All right. So I'm on the.
Even you have moved. Yeah. Can you see the recording icon, Narasimhan?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. So we are on the broadcast mode now.
Okay. All right.
So let me, Swati, can you enable your video, please? Okay, it's okay. I mean, so Narasimhan, let me just introduce. So we'll have two more co-hosts with us. So we have Ritvika from semester 4 and Swati from the second semester.
Hi, Swati.
Hi, sir.
So we're looking forward to your session, Narasimhan.
Sure. And how does this whole right? So just one question. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, sure. No
So
worries.
my presentation will
sure.
go on till 3:30, and then there'll be Q&A, right? Which
Correct.
Right, and it'll be on chat, right?
It'll be on chat. So I will basically be reading out the questions to you, the relevant questions to you, and you can answer that.
All right. So
you
you will
don't
be
have
moderating.
to read it out from the chat. I will be moderating for that.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Okay. All right.
So we have our participants joining in.
Okay.
Narasimhan, this is the opening screen, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. Ritvika, are you ready with the updations which I had told you?
Yeah, ma'am. Okay. Yeah, ma'am. I corrected all whatever you told. Ma'am, please let me know when to start.
Yeah. Ajay, you'll be letting Ritvika know when to start. Narsimhan, we'll start sharp at 2:30. So we'll just have to wait for another 5 minutes or so. Hello, can you hear me? Swati, Ritvika, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me, Narsimhan?
Clear.
Okay, okay. So we'll just start in another 4 minutes or so.
Sure.
Sharp at 2:30.
Sure. Kirtana,
Good afternoon, all. Hello.
Ritvika, you're audible.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. So, good afternoon, all. I am Ritvika from MBA final year of Ramaiah College of Arts, Science and Commerce. I heartily welcome you all on behalf of the Department of Management Studies of Ramaiah College of Arts, Science and Commerce for this series of webinars on management challenges and opportunities in the face of pandemic. We are having a series of 4 sessions, and today is the second day for the same. The topic for today is economic implications of COVID-19 in the industry. This topic will be taken by Mr. Narsimhan Srinivas, sir. I welcome you, sir, for today's session on behalf of the Ramaiah College. I would also like to welcome our Dean, Dr. Bindu Nambiar, for being a part of this session today. Also, a big welcome to all the faculties from our institution as well as from other esteemed institutions for being a part of this session. I also welcome all the students from Ramaiah College as well as from different colleges for being a part of this session. I welcome you all. Before the session starts, I request you all to please keep your mics in mute so that we can avoid any kind of disturbances during the session. And anyone who wishes to ask any question can do so using the chat box. And once the speaker concludes the session, we'll have a separate Q&A so that all the questions will be answered by sir. Now, it's an immense pleasure for me to introduce you all to our faculty moderator. She's adjunct professor, CA Nupur Chakrabarti ma'am. She is basically a finance faculty and deals with subjects like international business dynamics and international finance management. I welcome you, ma'am, for today's session, and I request you to please introduce the speaker for the day. Thank you.
It's my pleasure today to introduce Mr. Narsimhan Srinivas, who is our esteemed host for today's finance session. Mr. Narsimhan has over 20 years of leadership experience in various multinationals, By qualification, he's a CMA from the Institute of Cost Accountants of India, and he's also an ACCA. His diverse roles include driving transformational projects, setting up processes and systems in new businesses and startups, turning around business from a finance standpoint, and implementing business strategies. So currently he's working with Schneider Electric as Director Strategy, as Finance CFO for the IT business. Now, prior to his current employment with Schneider, he was employed in various roles with Coca-Cola, Indusleague, and Arvind Mills. He has worked across multiple geographies. He has been instrumental in setting up new business models and systems in the US, Norway, Canada, and Singapore during his earliest in Wipro. He has also recently earned the Certificate of Transforming Leadership from INSEAD Business School in Paris. He has won many awards with Schneider, and Mr. Narasimhan has been also involved in due diligence process for multiple acquisitions and post-integration processes. He has been recently acknowledged as the best finance business partner with Schneider for the IT international business. He has been instrumental in conceptualizing and implementing new business models within the organization. So it's quite an illustrious personality we have amongst us today. So without wasting any further time, I would turn over the dais to Mr. Narasimhan for his session with us. Over to you, sir.
Thanks a lot. I hope I'm audible. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, very much.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for your kind words. And first of all, before starting it off, I would like to thank the management team of Ramaiah College who've got me here for this session. It's a pleasure interacting with all of you, though it's online. Special call out to Dr. Chakrapani and Dr. Bindu Nambiar, who had been speaking with me and brought me here. Thanks a lot. It's a privilege to be here. Thanks. Okay, so the topic which I'm going to cover today is a huge one. It's a pretty vast one for everybody in the call. So, so good afternoon, and try to focus on it as much as possible. It's not going to be a very complex presentation. I've simplified the whole thing just for you all, and I will try to finish in maybe the next 40-45 minutes, and then we can open it for Q&A so that it can be as interactive as possible. Right. As I was just saying, so I work with Schneider. I've been with Schneider for around 10 years. So lots of people have been asking me about what Schneider is. So they've been asking me, is this a company which makes lifts? No, we don't make lifts. So I'll just walk you through a quick video, maybe just a couple of minutes, and then we head directly into the topic, right?
The world is full of people telling you who to believe they are. Well, we thought we'd tell you who we're not. Let's start here. We're not in shipping. We don't make lifts. Seriously, no lifts. We do this. We're good at this. And we make all of these. And even though you'll find us here and here, we don't make energy. We make you save it. And you'll be saving the environment too. Are we an internet company? Well, we connect and power just about everything around you, helping machines talk to each other and to you, making your world more personal. We're seeking out the big questions and answering them honestly. Like, how can we make the most of our energy and resources? Or can we make access to energy and digital, basic human rights? We're real people, employees, developers, partners, investors, and inventors, all passionate about doing what's right. We're open, humans of all sorts from all over, learning from each other and about each other. We're not here to save the world. It'll go on with or without us. We're here to help power and connect what you do every day to ensure life is on everywhere for everyone at every moment.
Yeah, so that was just a brief introduction about what Schneider is. Uh,
The
okay,
world
and
is
just to give you an idea, so we are around 20,000 people in India. So this is the presence in India, and we've got around 24 plants. Quite a lot of them are in Bangalore. And we've got 48 sales offices and 53 distribution centers. There's around 1,400 R&D staff, which is based out of Bangalore again, and 61,000 point of sales and 2,600 channel partners. And we also have our digital team based out of Bangalore. So this is just a quick introduction about what Schneider Electric is in India. Okay, so let me just quickly get into the topic, right? So first of all, so the topic which I've been given is economic implication of COVID in industry. To be very honest, I don't think it can be covered even if I had to do a marathon session for 24 hours because the topic is so huge. What I will try to do in a nutshell in 45 minutes is just to basically just maybe it's like a tip of the iceberg, a view from 40,000 feet is what I'm going to give you all. But it'll more or less give you a fair idea on where we stand and what the implications are of this phenomenon on industry, right? First of all, so all of you have been hearing about COVID everywhere, right? So you've been reading about it, hearing about it on television, on print, on your internet. Wherever you go, you can see it with masks all over. All over, and it's a pretty scary thing, right? So that's what all of us have been used to listening to, right? So first, so I think what we should do first is you should look at things what you can control and not do the things which are not under your control, right? So COVID is a phenomenon which is not under control. So why worry about it, first of all, right? Predicting what is going to happen, right? What are the mortalities which are going to happen? What's going to happen to us? What's going to happen to the neighborhood and all of that? It's good to have precautions, but at the same time, you don't have to worry about the world, something which you cannot control at all, right? So I think what we need to have is our focus area on what we could control, right? First of all, have a positive attitude, right? Turning off the news, most important, because every news channel is covering only about the deaths and the fatalities, which obviously triggers a negative mindset. I think the best thing which could happen is we could just switch off the news. Finding fun things to do at home, some community service, which you can actually contribute to the society, something which we could do. Social media is also of the same junk, right from morning, the moment you switch on at 6 o'clock, you see the count, which is going up and up and up and up, and you panic, which is not required, right? And all I'm saying is just have your precautions, right? Have your own social distancing, be kind, be graceful, contribute to the society, and just have a positive attitude. So focus on things which you can control and don't worry about the things which you cannot control. That's the most important thing. Okay, so what is disruption, right? So disruption is a disturbance or problems which interrupt an event or an activity, right? And disruption is everywhere, right? And what we are seeing is disruption. Okay. First, let me start off how many kinds of disruptions we have, right? So first one, the disruption by regulation, right? So this is the disruptions which happen to any business. This is more from a government standpoint, right? So we all know how plastic is getting banned. Any plastic bag lesser than 50 microns is banned. So that's banned. The tobacco is banned, gutka, especially this sort of tobacco, right? Diesel cars is banned, right? And we all know the famous Maggie story, right? This was around 4 years back when this product got banned by the government for having excessive levels of MSG, monosodium glycate, right? This became a huge issue, right? And Maggie, what happened? The revenue just tanked, right? And suddenly they were left with stocks all over. And this was a huge business to Nestle in terms of the revenue because India is the biggest in terms of noodle category form as Maggie, right? So this was an unexpected disruption which the business had, of course, and the business had to fight it out. And then after a year or 6 months or a year, Eventually, the company won the case, and now again Maggie is back, right? So there are disruptions which can be seen and which are unforeseen. So this is typically a case of an unforeseen circumstance, right? Similarly, in case of pharma, we see lots of drugs which have got banned, right? And these were government orders, and obviously you will have to have follow government regulations, right? So industry has its disruptions coming in from government which are unexpected, but you just need to find a quick fix to it, right? Okay, so this is the first sort of regulation which we saw. Okay, let's go to the next sort of disruption which we see. Disruption by scientific research, right? If you see all of this, right, whatever you see on screen is all again which has come out of science. Okay, let me talk about asbestos sheets, right? So earlier asbestos sheets was the norm, and then suddenly we discovered through science that it's not healthy, and now we no longer have these. I mean, at least in not those quantities. We know about the dalda category. It was a huge category, right? And all of a sudden, dalda and vanaspati got banned. And for levers, this was a huge source of revenue. And all of a sudden, this brand just vanished, right? And this one, what you see on the left is typically the soft drink manufacturing companies, right? Coming from Coke, this again had a huge impact. When people are getting more and more conscious about sugar and sugary food, the company had to sort of defocus from this and get into other categories like natural juices, right? While this still is a large category, the company actually diversified into juices and other healthier categories, right? So while you see that everywhere there is definitely a disruption, the positive thing is there is also an opportunity which comes out of it, right? Like, for example, if there was no disruption or no harm caused on account of sugary drinks, the scientific research didn't say that, there would be no Minute Maid, there would be no Tropicana, right? So the company had to diversify into alternate juices because of this disruption, right? Let's go into activism. Okay, this is a sort of disruption which happens typically due to activism everywhere, right? So what you see on the screen is where in Indonesia, there were 1,000 orangutans which got threatened by illegal operations there, mining operations, and the mining operations had to be shut. HUL, we all know, where this was a very, very recent controversy which just happened a couple of years back when the company was found dumping mercury in Kodaikanal. At least it was alleged. It wasn't found. It was actually alleged that the company was dumping mercury in Kodai. Again, this was a negative setback for the company. And I don't know how many of you remember this pesticide issue of Coke, right? So I was with Coke then. I was working there. And this is one incident which will clearly not go, which will remain etched in my memory forever, right? Overnight, there were allegations which were done by, again, an NGO saying that Coke and Pepsi had pesticides in their drinks, which wasn't true, right? The irony of the news is that it picks up negative things very fast, right? So obviously, when you're a multinational, it's like you're living in a glass house, and immediately everybody said, "Look, Coke is adding pesticide," and it actually never was, right? But what happened was the immediate impact was that it had a very negative image on the brand. All the stocks had to be disposed of because all these are perishable products, right? I don't know if you've seen that. If you go and look at a Coke bottle, it'll have a BBD. It says best before date, right? Typically, it'll be there between a month or so. And if you don't use it, you actually have to dispose of the bottle because the drink is not considered very healthy, right? So this was a case where it happened that it just came out of the blue one day morning. Suddenly in the newspaper, it was all over. There was complete panic all over the company. And there were like tons and tons of this soft drink which had to be flushed down, right? So the inventory we lost, the money didn't come because whatever you had invoiced to the dealers and the partners, they never paid up because they couldn't sell. Where would they give you? They would pay the money. So there were huge write-offs, receivables, inventory. But the larger impact was that Coke had taken a brand beating in India, which harmed the company in the US, right? So the bigger impact was the brand. And you don't expect those brands to make a mistake because they were so very conscious. pay the taxes very regularly, and this was something which just came out of the blue, right? But as I was saying, negative sentiments gets spread very, very fast. And in fact, this also, there were also talks of saying Coke was actually depleting water and stuff like that, which never happened, right? But of course, the company has moved a long way on then, and then it's proved that there is nothing like that. uh, and of course, but it took a long, it was a long haul, right? So it's always that when there is something positive, it takes a very long time to prove. Whereas when you have something negative, it just happens in a couple of seconds. And lo and behold, the organization has a major jolt. Okay, let's go to the other disruption now. Okay, this disruption, which I'm going to talk about, is by competition, right? You all know about this brand, Patanjali, right? This was a very, very smart Indian brand, right? Which suddenly came out of the blue one fine day. They were building their base, but then suddenly uh, the multinationals took a very, very long time to realize this impact, right? And suddenly Patanjali came. They came in shampoos, they came in detergent, name in any FMCG, they were all there, right? So they've started making noodles, they've started making food, and all of a sudden they just diversified. And all of a sudden, companies like Levers, P&G, right, were taken aback because they didn't foresee this sort of an impact coming through. And all of a sudden, there was this Indian company which just came and disrupted the whole business, right? So, and what happens is in typical corporations, you don't, while you can predict what the future is, you go on a typical conservative growth rate. Let's say in 2020, if I've got a, let's say 100 rupees of revenue, I would take a 10 or 15% depending on how the market's growing, and I actually prepare for it, right? These disruptions which happen are typically not forecasted because they just happen out of the blue, right? So this brand which I'm talking about, Patanjali, is actually looking at doing something like 25,000 crores, right? Not a small number. And of course, now again, the rest of the multinationals have come out with strategies to sort of counter this, right? To see what we can do and all of that. But this is an amazing brand. This is a classic case of how a small-time Indian brand could grow large and could actually disrupt the huge market, right? So competition can come from anywhere, and this is one ample proof as to how this has come up, right? Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, this again, Reliance Jio, all of you know about this, the disruption it's caused, right? What did they do? They said, I'm going to give you voice free. And initially they said, I'm also going to give you data free. I mean, that was there for some time. And then they started charging for the data after some time. But by then, what had happened was there are now only two major telecom operators in the country, right? Which we all know of. The third one is still hanging on to a thread. But there are just two major competitors, right? So the telecom industry was in shamble. You can see what's happening now, right? It's sort of picking up now thanks to whatever is happening now in terms of digital revolution. But these two companies were majorly impacted, right? The other two, Vodafone Idea and Airtel, right? Because of the pricing strategy of what Reliance did. They just outsmarted competition. And the way they've played the game is just that they've got around 10 crore, 12 crore subscribers within a couple of years. That's the sort of approach they took. That is the sort of reach which they had, just sheer volumes, and they eliminated virtually competition, right? So again, this was something which would have not been foreseen earlier. 7 years back, no Vodafone or no Airtel would have seen Reliance getting into the space and disrupting their business model, right? So this is again a classic case where competition comes and you're not prepared for it, right? Okay, let's go to this one. Okay, the next disruption which can happen is by obsolescence, right? What you see there on the first one is the brand Kodak. I don't know how many of you remember that Kodak brand, right? All of us used to use it in our cameras. The cameras were all Kodak then, right? And what happened? They were in the traditional film rolls, and lo and behold, you had the digital cameras which came in, and then they completely eliminated Kodak, right? Something very, very interesting for all of you to know. I don't know how many of you all know, it was Kodak who actually invented digital cameras in the world. right? And there was this bunch of there was this guy who actually invented the digital camera who went to the board and said, look, we found something called the digital camera. Why don't we launch it? Right? The board had all got chemical engineers, right? And the chemical engineers refused to see this phenomenon coming through because they were still in the traditional mindset of the typical film roles. They said nothing doing this is not going to happen. But when it did happen, it actually washed out the company. The company is no longer there. Right. The next one, BlackBerry. BlackBerry virtually had a monopoly, right? So everywhere, in almost all the organizations, everywhere, everybody was using BlackBerry, right? In fact, and what happened? They refused to believe in the touchscreen technology. They were not prepared, and then Apple just came in and then wiped them out, right? And today you see Apple, Samsung, and all of that, right? And where do you see BlackBerry? It's no longer there, right? The same thing with Nokia. Nokia was considered as the most sturdy phones, and in India we had such a popular following for it. You could drop it from the fourth floor, nothing would happen to the phone, right? It was so sturdy, so robust. Battery backup was extremely good, not like today's phones, right? You just had to charge it once a week, and you could run with the phone for on and on and on. But they again couldn't see what was happening, right? And see where Nokia is today, right? So these are some trends which you actually see in the industry, right? Which disruptions which do happen. And if you are unprepared, you actually end up winding up that business, right? But if you look at the positive side of all the examples, as I was saying earlier as well, right? If the consumption is still the same, the overall consumption is still the same, right? So if a BlackBerry is gone, an Apple or a Samsung is there today, right? If a Nokia is gone, again, there's a Samsung or an Apple, right? If a Kodak is gone, now you've got the various digital cameras or it's a part of your mobile phone. It's just a matter of change in the consumption pattern, right? We actually, where the people move from one category to a different category, right? So again, this was a major disruption, right? Okay, this is disruption by technology, right? I am sure all of you know about this disruption which has happened, right? First one, you know how Uber has disrupted the market, how the cab companies have gone out of service, right? They just came with an app. They don't own any assets, and you can book your cabs, which you're all doing, right? Completely destroyed the traditional business, right? Just similar to Uber, on the far right, you can see Airbnb. They exactly did the same thing, right? Now, if you look at it, actually, Airbnb's valuation is much higher than a Marriott, right? Than all the traditional hotel chains. And how many hotels do they own? Zero, right? All they do is tie up with properties and then let these properties get let out and they earn a commission on this, right? Extremely smart idea. Technology has just revolutionized that industry, right? Next comes the bank, right? So how many of you actually visit the banks nowadays, except for, let's say, a typical public sector bank, which people still go to? But I personally, I get annoyed if I have to go to the bank or even speak to a customer care officer, right? Everything happens on the mobile now. All you do is just have an app, right? And it tells you everything, right? In fact, very interesting, right? So what's emerging now is I also happen to be a part of this angel network, where actually every week I go and review various startups which happen, right? The next trend which are going to come up are the neobanks, right? So the neobanks are typically where meant for the millennials, right? This bank actually sort of is like a personalized assistant, which actually tells you where to invest and what to invest, and everything on the click of a button on your mobile phone, right? So we're going to that age now, right? So typically from a concrete bank, we've moved to an internet bank and now to a neo bank, which is going to be the future, right? And then of course, you can see what happened to the Telegram, right? All of us know what happened to the Telegram, right? It died a natural death, obviously. And this, in fact, was only one of the important modes of communication then, where you had to reach out to people, and now it no longer exists, right? And for technology now, I mean, you look at the startups typically, right? There are lots of such technologies which have come out, and the world is just getting disrupted due to startups now, who are contributing significantly to this technology trend, right? Okay, now let's go to this topic. This disruption which is happening now, right, is the COVID disruption. So this is unprecedented, global, massive, and it's got both human and financial impacts, right? So this is something, again, just like the earlier disruptions, this was something which was completely unforeseen, right? I still remember this year, even in the month of March, we were making aggressive estimates for this year's landing, right? And as we built on March 15th, suddenly it was announced that there's going to be a lockdown, and people just had to get back home, right? Though businesses have continued from work from home and all of that, but between May and June, you would be seeing the corporate results, right? It's been bad, where some companies have definitely taken a beating in terms of their revenue forecast, right? So business has definitely got impacted. But the positive news is also that there are some businesses which have actually positively benefited out of it, right? Positive benefits, uh, companies like, let's say, Microsoft, where because of their digital platforms, the teams grew well. Zoom, where the video conferencing went well, right? Even for us, for Schneider, all of a sudden we are seeing a surge in terms of demand for the digital applications, right? Digital application in terms of eco-structure and how you manage your assets, right? How you can actually service through your network digitally, rather than actually having to be physically in the site trying to service those machines, right? So it's a complete transformation now, where we're seeing more and more of digital. Okay. Okay. Now let's see what the impact of COVID is on India, right? So I'm sure you would have seen this slide. I mean, at least some of you. I'm not going to talk about how it's infected and what's the impact. As I said earlier, let's not focus on something which we cannot control. But just for all of you to know, our GDP, which was at 5.2, has been called out to be 3.5, 2.5, and 2.1. And some agencies have actually said there's going to be a negative GDP for the year, right? So India is possibly going to have plus between a -1 and a +2. That's the sort of forecast coming in from multiple agencies, right? So you would have seen our downgrade in the sovereign ratings of the country. Of course, it is just not limited to India. It just happened everywhere. But again, we had a downgrade basically because of one, the impact on the GDP. Second, of the fiscal deficit, which may come up because of the GDP forecast going negative, right? Of course, what goes down will not remain down. It will have to come up, right? So that's the theory. What goes down will have to come up, and what goes up usually it tends to come down, right? So what are the different sort of recoveries which are being proposed? Some say it's going to be a V recovery, right? It's just imagine the letter V, where it's just fallen and all of a sudden it's going to go up. Some are saying it's going to be a U recovery, right? Where it's going to be a U sort of recovery. It's going to be a gradual growth. And some are saying it's going to be a Nike recovery. I don't know if you know, remember the logo of Nike, just do it. So people say that it's going to be a Nike recovery. So multiple versions, but nobody knows what's going to happen, right? So that's where we stand now. Okay, let's look at what the impact is on multiple industries. Okay, the impact on industries which we see. So what you see on the left is a low impact, right, which COVID has had on industries. Medium is not so very big, and high is definitely a high impact on the industries. Okay, the low impact industries, healthcare, right? You can see that healthcare is booming, though the private hospitals aren't doing all that good, again, because there are not many patients who are turning up, but still the government hospitals are doing okay. And there's lots of investment which is happening in healthcare, right? So you see the ventilators, India made eye for eye in ventilators made by Mahindra's, BEL. There are lots of companies which are making these investments and the new technology being invested in the country. Pharmaceuticals. I don't know how many of you follow uh, the stock markets. You would have seen all the pharma stocks have shot up by almost 200%, 150% in fact, right? Huge opportunity for India. India has always been strong in pharma. It's just that now with the FDA opening up, there's been lots and lots more exports which are happening out of India, and India is going to play a huge role in the future in pharma. Defense not impacted because the government still spends on defense. I mean, India's borders will have to get protected, so government will still continue to spend on defense. Equipment and transportation not so very impacted because transportation will happen. Okay, there was a temporary blip for a month, but again you can see how the transportation is happening. Okay, food retail. So again, that's going to have a low impact, right? Irrespective of a lockdown or not, people continue to eat, and so that I don't think is going to be impacted so much. Telecoms, very interesting. Uh, because of the digital connectivity and so much of work from home and study from home, right? So all of you are logging into webinars, all of you are studying from home. There is actually a demand for data now. Okay, so for companies like Bharti, Reliance, and even maybe Vodafone partly, this is going to be a huge boon, right? So the ARPU has gone up, the average revenue per user, and the results reflect that. So this is a big opportunity for telecoms. ITITS not so very significantly impacted, very low impact. It's again maybe a seasonality down. Some IT companies have reported very good results. Waste management not impacted. What is a medium impact? Okay, is construction materials. You would have seen that. Technology, hardware, because all this is related to construction. Steel producers, again medium impact. Service companies, offline education, right? So offline education, people have actually moved from offline to online, right? I mean, name the large companies. I mean, suddenly they're all their eyes are wide open. Look at companies like Byju's or any of those companies, right? So all your study material is all online now. So that's a big shift. But they've taken a beating. But I'm sure it'll come back. It's just a temporary blip. That's why I've said it's a medium. It's not a high impact. It's just a medium impact. Chemicals, beverages, right? So let's take alcohol as industry, right? UB stocks were completely down. They took a beating because there was a shutdown in alcohol, but now it's opened up. So it's again picking up. So it's just a medium impact. So I'm sure nobody will stop alcohol, right? So that's going to continue. Media, metals and mining, etc. So which has a medium impact. Let's look at what is going to have a high impact. Travel and tourism, definitely big. People are still not comfortable traveling. You still go in the flights. You will still, there is a gap which will need to be maintained. Social distancing has to be maintained. So that's definitely an impact. People don't still want to go out. They still are very skeptical, right? So this is going to take a long time to recover, right? Passenger airlines, again, so as I was saying, social distancing is also being maintained even within the aircraft. So that's going to take a long time to recoup. Retail, right? Again, people are still not comfortable to go to places which is crowded. You still don't want to shop. So people are actually shifting from retail to an online mode to an e-commerce mode, right? Automotive, actually the industry had a setback even much before COVID, and COVID has only accelerated the problem, right? Because people still aren't going to the showrooms to buy cars. And a very interesting data point, actually, India Mart actually sold the maximum number of two-wheelers, right? Very interesting. You've never seen four-wheelers and two-wheelers being sold by e-commerce. That trend is happening, right? Hospitality, fashion and luxury, again, a good to have, right? And these are industries which are going to take some time to recover. When I take some, there is no crystal ball gazing. Maybe we just hope that maybe after 6 or 7 months, these would recover, right? But whatever you see in green and yellow, green is like where there are opportunities now because of the pandemic, where actually companies have actually used it and they've seen their top line grow. Medium is sort of neutral, and the high impact maybe 6 months to a year. Nobody knows how long this journey is going to take, but it'll take some time for it to recover. Okay, what is most important thing is convert crisis into opportunities, right? Never let a crisis go to waste. Okay, every crisis brings an opportunity along with it, right? Which we have seen everywhere, right? If you saw, if you see our, okay, let me talk about one opportunity which I just see: digital payments, right? So now I don't know how many of you go to the shops, right? You still are very, very skeptical of paying currency and exchanging notes, right? It's all now, every small vendor, at least in Bangalore, which you see, has got a Google Pay or a Paytm or a Beam or a UPI, right? And all of us are very, very comfortable. It's not that we're not. So everybody started using that, right? So this was again like a crisis which happened during the demonetization time when there was actually no currency. It actually accelerated the digital revolution in India, right? So this could actually accelerate that digital journey yet again in India, right? So for India, it's going to be a huge, huge opportunity. This crisis, while yes, definitely there are going to be setbacks, right? There is a temporary setback, but I think India is well positioned if you can actually use it to have a very good growth economy, right? I will tell you the opportunities about India in the next slide, right? First, what you need to do is, it's just not that you have to go and look at opportunities, right? So first you have to get your hygiene right, right? This is more from an organization perspective. Preserve your capital, right? This is like, you see that picture when you go on an aircraft. It says first you wear your oxygen mask, ensure that your oxygen, you get enough oxygen before you actually help somebody else, right? It's similarly that way. Ensure that your capital, you preserve your capital and you don't blow up your money, right? Be very, very prudent in what you spend, right? Don't go on an overdrive, don't go for things which are good to have. Just spend on something which you must have, right? So that's the most important thing. Preserve your capital. That's what I mean by saying preserve your capital. Focus on clarity. Focus on the targets, what we need to actually get out, right? The metrics don't really matter now, right? For example, what I mean here is, let's say this particular pandemic, right? Companies need to ensure that you've got enough cash, right? Your margins are always there, but for a moment, at least these 3 or 4 months, the idea is not to focus on the margins, because the most important thing is liquidity. Ensure that you have cash to pay your vendors, you have cash to pay your employees, you have cash for all the reasons which you have, right? So maybe whatever terms of any spending which has come in terms of, let's say, an IT spend, which is absolutely crucial. So you need to preserve that cash. That's very, very important. So that's the most important thing. So have your targets very, very clearly defined and ensure that you execute those targets, right? It'll be a slow build back, right? So long-term plans are definitely taking a backseat. As I was saying, let's say typical capex decisions of, let's say, putting up a plant, right? So if you're running a business as usual, and I'd wanted to set up a plant after 2 years, or let's say after 6 months to 2 years, those plans are definitely taking a backseat, because companies are saying, look, let me first come back to base zero, identify what's going wrong or what's going right, and then once I have a fix of the issue, and once the market picks up, that's where I'm going to go and start reinvesting in capex, right? The next one is innovation, right? Innovation is, this is the time for innovation, right? So you've got new business models which are coming in. All the companies are going digital now, right? So everybody you see, there's a digital approach. And you can see lots of startups actually very interestingly getting into the space, right? For innovation, for social distancing. I know of a startup which actually has this technology within the company. This is within typically a plant where they actually give you the RFID cards, right? So they actually tag it along with your ID card. So you just have to wear your ID cards and then move in the plant. Of course, there is a restriction. And the moment there are two people within a distance of 6 feet, there is an alarm which gets triggered off, right? And you know that you're too close to the person who's standing next to you. So either you move away or that person moves away, right? And similarly, in case of meeting rooms, right? In your meeting room, let's say the capacity is for 6 people, and you've got, let's say, and now the new prescribed norm is that you just need to have 2 people in there because of the 30% limit. But then suddenly there are 4. This sort of triggers off an alarm, okay? And you know that 2 people will have to either move out of the meeting room or you move it to a bigger meeting room, right? And all of this technology is also centrally monitored, right? So this sort of innovation actually never existed before the pandemic. If you actually think about it, these are ideas which have come out of the pandemic. And just imagine, it's just been there for 3 months and startups are already there with an innovation and with a solution to be delivered, right? So if you're agile, if you are on your feet, if you can do smart thinking, this is your moment of opportunity to seize it, right? But if you're still traditional, you're still, as I said, if you're fearful, and if you're saying, oh no, what's happened to me, the world is coming to an end, then that is where you're going to be remaining, right? So it all depends on how you see, whether it's a glass is half full or if it's half empty, right? Okay, so now let's go to what are the opportunities which are coming up for India, right? So this is for our country as a whole. First one, I don't know how many of you read this yesterday. This was there in the ET as well. Indian IT sector is feeling the pain, as I was saying, but in time, this is going to be the best thing to have happened since Y2K, right? Why? Because there's going to be huge investment which is going to come into digital, and all the IT companies are going to benefit out of it. We are seeing work from home, which is happening. You're already, as I said, you're seeing the number of connections for Zoom and Microsoft which are going up. You see the amount of investment which is going up in cyber security. You see the amount of bandwidth which is being consumed. So you need software to upgrade your bandwidth. You're going to be seeing lots of applications which are going to move from work to home. So again, there's going to be lots of cloud servers which are required. So there's going to be lots of technology which is going to come out of it, right? The amount of data which is going to be stored, right? In fact, I represent the secure power business of Schneider Electric, which does data centers. The forecast for data centers in the next couple of years is something like a 35% growth. You know why? Just because of the amount of data consumption which is happening. The data is being consumed today, right? Whatever you see, how many of you are watching your Amazon Prime and Netflix at home? Just imagine how much data you're consuming, right? Right? You're doing, I'm sure most of you are into gaming, right? So all of you must be gaming from home. People are working from home, right? So where does all of this sit, right? All this data will have to sit in servers, right? And all these servers, where are they going to be positioned? All these servers, right? Quite a lot of them in India due to localization requirements. So which means you need more data centers. So more investment coming in. So this is a huge opportunity for IT companies, right? There will be a temporary blip, but definitely that's going to recover, right? Next one, shift in consumption. You all heard our Prime Minister speak, Atmanirbhar Bharat, right? Shift in consumption, right? How many of you are consciously buying Make in India products, which wasn't there before the pandemic, right? Now you see all over your WhatsApp, you say, buy India, don't buy Chinese stuff and stuff like that, right? Isn't this an opportunity for Indian companies, right? So you're going to see more and more of Make in India. More companies are going to invest, and you will see lots of Make in India, which is going to come out. And that will definitely help our industry. Make in India investments for global supply chains moving into India, right? You've already seen the Chinese anti-Chinese segment, which is very political now. So these global supply chains are actually trying to move out of China, right? So you've got, I'm not sure how many of you've seen, actually the Japanese government spending quite a lot to ensure that these global chains actually move out of China. Apple, quite a bit of production is moving into India. It's just that we as a country have to address this opportunity and ensure that the right sort of investments are being given to these companies, right sort of incentives are being given to these companies, and there'll be quite a lot of global supply chains which can move potentially into India, right? That's again a big opportunity. New areas in healthcare, right? So India was actually a consumer of PPE kits, as in we used to import PPE kits from China and from other places because we never had them, right? Now India has become a net exporter of PPE kits, right? When people saw that the garment companies saw that they could no longer export any garments or textiles because of this, because the export orders have fallen, they looked at a completely alternative solution, and creativity, lo and behold, we had suddenly the PPE kits which came out, and we are now exporting to the globe, right? We're exporting PPE kits, we're also exporting pharma, right? Low cost ventilators, right? So as I was saying earlier, Mahindra is making ventilators. There's a company in Pune, and I just forgot the name, that makes ventilators. BEL is actually making ventilators, and these are completely low cost. This is like a eye for eye, India for India products, right? And people are looking at exporting the ventilators as well, right? So that's again a big opportunity for India. New pharma, I talked about this earlier. New opportunities in pharma for export of drugs. Startup culture accelerating in India, which I already talked about, right? So as I was saying earlier, I used to see, maybe this was a year back, we have a startup Saturday where every startup typically comes and presents to us as a part of the angel investing network. Now we see 3 or 4 coming up almost every week, right? There are so many startups which are coming out, and they're solving new problems which we have never would have imagined. So I was like, going through some startups, why can't I even think of that problem? No, I mean, there are so many which have come out, very, very interesting. So many companies coming up, and they're all employing people, right? They're all employing students who just pass out of college, or there are some maybe with 3 or 4 years experience. And coincidentally, all these startups are being created by the millennials, the people who just come out of college, right? Uh, I mean, such is the creativity in this area. Amazing, amazing area for again India to accelerate. Huge digital opportunity in India, right? Facebook, Geo, you would have all seen that, right? The huge amount of investment which Facebook did in Reliance Geo. They believe they did it not because of they wanted to do it, but they believe there is a very, very huge, big opportunity in India, right? Which is going to happen. They're going to get aggressively, in that space, in the typical Indian retail grocery space. That's where they're going to get into, and that's why this alliance works so well, right? So again, there is a huge opportunity over here as well. So that's where they've gotten, and this is one area which is going to interestingly develop quite a lot, right? And to top it all, the government announced a package of 20 lakh crores, which is 10% of GDP, right? So there's going to be lots of investment which is going to come. First of all, in terms of the SMB, the small and medium enterprises, you would have already seen that a fair bit of investment is going there to ease the liquidity. And there's going to be lots of spending in infrastructure which will come around, right? There is also another package which is expected from the government pretty soon. They're just waiting for things to stabilize. Then there's going to be one more economic stimulus which the government is going to do, right? All this helps in the liquidity of the country. It also triggers lots and lots of employment, right? And all this is contributing to an opportunity in India which we never had before, not even as early, just 3 or 4 months back. Just look at the screen now and just see how many positive uh, incidents have actually emerged out of the pandemic. Forget what you're seeing in the media and what you're seeing. It's always sort of no hope situation, and that's going to go wrong. This is going to go wrong. No, there are so many opportunities. It's just that how we're going to actually utilize this opportunity, right? Okay, so I just want to go to this one is something which I like the most. I keep reading it on and off. Hard times don't create heroes. It's during the hard times when the hero within us is revealed, right? It depends on how we're going to exploit it and how the hero from us comes out, right? So that's the most important thing. Okay, this too shall pass, as I was saying. So it's a matter of time. You would have already seen all your Sensex and the NSE rebounding back, right? The industry is coming back to not normal, but sort of normal. We're there, right? And stay safe and stay healthy. With this, I come to the close of the presentation. Thanks a lot. And I open it up for questions. I think I'm exactly on time, maybe 5 minutes ahead of time. Thank you. Not able to hear you, Nupur. I guess you're still on mute.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was on mute.
Yeah.
So that was really a wonderful session. Thank you very much. And thank you for opening up to the positive sides of COVID. So we have been bombarded till now with lots of negatives. And really, I really do agree with you. Thanks for holding up the various opportunities we have. And I'm sure the students and all the other participants have got a fair idea of what opportunities are available for us. So as you said, like the way we see it, it's our choice to seeing the situation, whether the glass half full or the glass half empty. So it's our choice as to how we see it. Thank you very much. And I'll move over to the question and answer session. So we have got quite a few questions here. Um, so one of the question which has kept coming is the effect on the imports from China. So we have, so basically we have one question here, which one participant who has asked us, why can't, do you think that India can compete with China, especially in the electronic sector with respect to manufacturing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yes, we are all
Opportunity which we have and replace China. What is your opinion on that?
sure, Nupur. So first of all, I don't know how many of you will know. There are in fact a couple of corporations who've already moved, right? One of our typical large customers, they've actually shut down their plant in China. They've moved. I mean, that is easier said than done. It will happen, but not immediately, because if you look at India as a whole, we are also so dependent on China, right? So for all the, even to the extent of pharma, while we remain a large exporter of pharma, 60% of the ingredients for pharma still we import from China, right? So we will have to find substitutes, and then once you find substitute, definitely yes. So the vision of the prime minister is good. I mean, it's like Atmanirbhar Bharat. It will happen. It's only a matter of time, right? I will tell you from an Apple perspective, there are quite a lot of plants which are still moving to India, which are in the process of getting moved. And Samsung, the Samsung plant in Wuhan actually shut. Right, this was around last month, and the entire global production actually moved to the plant in Noida. I don't know how many of you all know that Samsung is building huge plants in Noida, right, in UP, and there was the entire production got moved to Noida, right? So while we all say that we want to definitely move away from China and all that, it's not going to be very easy. I'm not going to say that it's going to be very easy, because forget India, the whole world is still dependent on China because it's a global manufacturing hub, right? Basically because of the cost and the way they work, right? So there's so much discipline in the way they work and how they bring their output in terms of the delivery timelines. But the shift will happen. It will be a gradual shift. It's up to India to see how we are actually going to capitalize on the opportunity and get the plants here to India. And that's happening. It's already happening. I'm seeing it. And eventually, after some time, maybe it will, let's all hope that we're going to be definitely Atmanirbhar Bharat in the next 3-4 years. Yeah.
Yeah, surely. We all hope to be all made in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat. So one more question, very pertinent to students here, is what is the effect on the job market which you foresee in the coming year? So we have students who would be graduating out very soon. So what are the prospects with respect to the job market? What do you foresee?
Yeah, excellent. There are opportunities which I was saying. There are companies which have definitely put hiring plans on a hold for now, but it's just a matter of time, as I said. For example, we ourselves have put recruitment on a hold, but it's just a matter of time. In 2 months, things will come to a normal because the markets are definitely opening up. But there are companies like e-commerce which are still recruiting people aggressively. So there are opportunities for those companies. Startups are still recruiting people. There are layoffs in a few companies. I definitely do agree because of this, but it's just a passing cloud, right? You just need to be patient, and I'm sure things will get back to normal within maybe the next 6 months, right? It's just a matter of time. But there are companies who are still recruiting. As I said, IT companies, still there is a huge opportunity. There are going to be digital opportunities. So those companies will continue to recruit. So it depends on which industry you're going to focus on. As I said, if you're going to be going to, let's say, a travel industry or a tourism industry and expecting that they're going to recruit, no way they're going to be doing that. Just focus on where you want to get into, and I'm sure there are opportunities. Just focus on the relevant opportunities. That's all. Yeah.
Right. Very truly said. So when you're speaking of sectors, so we have a question from Shruti. So Shruti Shashiraj has asked, what will be the effects on the real estate sector? It's already a very jittery sector, even before COVID, uh, uh, very badly impacted by demonetization and GST. So now the COVID sets in. So how do we look at how is the sector going to fare in the near future?
Yeah. Real estate as a sector, yes, it's been impacted both because there have been lots of reforms and transformation which have happened in the real estate industry, right? So all of us know that there has been the RERA, which has been institutionalized, right? There's been lots of liquidity which has been sucked out of the system. Yes, we are seeing that because for us, in fact, coincidentally, one of the biggest sectors is real estate as well, right? So we are seeing a temporary blip, but the government is doing everything to ensure that the real estate comes back. I don't know how many of you read that. So there's going to be adequate additional liquidity which is being introduced to the builders, right, to ensure that they can sort of postpone their moratoriums or extend the moratoriums, right? So let's say if they had to pay it within 3 months, they're saying, okay, we don't have to pay it within 3 months. Maybe we can look at maybe a 6 or 9 month, right? So that's happening. But real estate, again, it will come back. It's just that it's just a matter of time, as you're saying, if you remember that sector, that's particular slide, real estate has a medium impact. It will have to come back, given the huge demand. As I said, once things come back to normal, and if we're going to be seeing lots and lots of more urbanization, which is going to happen, and urbanization will happen how? When there is going to be infrastructure which is created in the country, and how will infrastructure happen when government spending increases? So it's all linked to each other. The moment government spending increases, all of this is going to happen, and it's just a matter of time when we're going to be seeing the real estate industry also bouncing back.
Sure. So another upcoming industry is the e-commerce industry.
True.
So you've got quite a few questions on the e-commerce industry. So what do you feel, so most of these startups are in the e-commerce sector. How do you feel the e-commerce industries are going to fare in the near future?
Well, if this was an extremely bright light, this is like the e-commerce industry right now, right? So, I mean, how many of you have started ordering from Amazon and the Flipkarts of the world, right? And you're also moving into not only that, even into groceries, right? Everywhere, into the food, whatever food you have, it's e-commerce, right? And you're seeing only accelerating happening in that, right? And as I was saying earlier, why do you think Facebook invested in Geo, right? And that's going to be a huge revolution. Facebook and Geo are going to get into the mom and pop stores, and they're going to revolutionize that entire industry. That's where the investment's going to come from, right? So e-commerce is definitely going to be a huge opportunity. That's why that sector is of so much focus. That's why most of the startups there are the technology startups which get into that space. Definitely, it's going to be a very attractive sector for India for sure.
Okay. So I think that's a welcome answer for most of our participants here. So we see e-commerce as, one of the major recruiters, if I may say, in the forthcoming times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So one more question we have from Virish, basically. So given that the businesses are down in most of these sectors, what do we foresee with respect to the GST collections of the government? Because that's one of the highest grosses of revenue to the government, directly impacting the infrastructure, the government spending basically. And it's a vicious circle, we all know. So how do you foresee the GST collections in the forthcoming time?
So that's a good question. Actually, the government had a very aggressive target for GST collection, right? So they were looking at something like around 1 lakh crores per month. That was the sort of target. And I think 1 month we did it. This was sometime in November last year, I think, where the GST collections touched 1 lakh crores a month. Right now, it's nowhere close to that. It's 25% of that. Yes, because the economy has fallen. People aren't buying anything. GST has definitely taken a beating. because GST has taken a beating, government's revenue has taken a beating, and that's why the fiscal deficit of the country is expected to go up.
Correct.
Right, where we were at around 3.5 to 4%, it's expected to go up to 9 or 10%. So that's the sort of cap. And because the physical deficit has gone up, our government borrowings will increase, right? And that is because that is why, as I was saying earlier, the agencies, the Moody's has actually downgraded India, right? Because of this huge fiscal deficit. And this is not a concern just for India. It's happened to almost all of the emerging economies. If you look at Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, everywhere it's happening, right? South Africa, everywhere, Brazil, everywhere the sovereign rating of the country has gone down because of this
Correct.
particular impact. And but the government is having enough measures now, right? And I'm sure there'll be enough liquidity measures. The package was just for that, and I'm sure once the economy picks up, the GST collections also will go up. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. So we have another question by Nikhil G. So Nikhil's question is, would it be advisable to invest in the highly impacted industries, given that we have, I mean, the share prices have dipped quite low, but again, they stand a high risk. So should we take advantage of the dipped prices and invest in the highly impacted industries?
Yeah, Nikhil, you got the answer in your question, right? So definitely, yes, it is high risk. But if you actually see it as an opportunity, it's don't take it as my personal recommendation. But if you actually want to invest, this is a good opportunity, definitely, to invest. But you will have to select the sector and select the company. That's very, very important. If you're able to spot the opportunity, and if you think this company has got a good future, and there were some blue chip stocks, I don't know if you noticed, never went down during the pandemic, right? As I said, pharma doubled, right? If you had
Correct.
invested in pharma 3 months back, today it would have been a good bet. But some blue chip companies, the share price never actually went out because the valuations didn't go down, obviously because of this. But there are definitely good companies whose valuation has taken a beating. If you can just spot those opportunities and if you can invest, why not? But of course, as I said, it's a highly risky investment. It's your personal
Correct.
choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have one more question from Shweta Mukherjee. So she questions us on the effect on the SME sector. So the SME is something which has really been battered over this period. So how do we look at the SME sector faring in the coming times?
Yes, Shweta. So yes, SME industries have definitely taken a beating for sure. And the government is also deeply concerned about the SME sector for sure. So if you look at the package of fiscal deficit package, the economic package which the government did was around 10% of GDP, 3% out of which is for the SME, right? So there is definitely a strong focus from the government on SMEs because they know that SMEs create employment. They know SMEs are important for the nation. So that's why there's been additional liquidity measures which have been introduced there, and they're also eligible now for higher loans without any additional documentation. So the government is doing everything to ensure that the SME sector bounces back. So that's very, very important, and I agree, and that's a very, very critical sector for us. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very highly intensive, employment intensive sector. So it does require revival very early. So we have a question from Anusha Jain. So Anusha Jain asks us, which are the sectors where we expect recovery at a faster rate post the pandemic? And which are the sectors where we are looking at a slower recovery rate?
Yeah, Anusha, I don't know if you remember, I covered the slide earlier. So these are, what you see on the right is all slow recovery. What you see on the left is all fast recovery, right? So the areas which are definitely going to go slow is travel and tourism, airlines, apparel, consumer durables, etc. So a good to have will have a slow recovery. A must have will have a faster recovery. In fact, they never had any impact. It's just going to accelerate. And whichever sectors are going to be looking at different diversifying their business models, that is somewhere where we're going to be seeing definitely lots of acceleration. They were saying traditional brick and mortar companies are moving to digital. So that's an area where we're going to see faster recovery. IT is definitely going to boom. Digital is definitely going to boom. So there's no doubts on all of this. So these are the areas where we're going to see definitely a very, very fast recovery there.
Sure. So we'll quickly take two questions.
Sure.
One question is by another participant, interesting one. So we have seen the price of gold has been on a rise since the COVID situation. So
Yeah.
we'd like to know the reason behind that.
The reason why, that's a good question actually. The reason why gold went up because it was just a different asset class, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happened was the FIIs, right, and the FDIs, typically the FIIs, right? So they have 3 or 4 classes to invest. One is government
Mm-hmm.
treasury bonds. One is typically your shares, your stock markets, right? Or third one is debt, which is private debt. I don't know how many of you know that the Franklin Templeton debt funds got a hit, right? I mean, just not the whole thing, just a couple of funds because of the sovereign ratings of the NBFCs, right? So that got a hit. So people got very, very skeptical saying, where do we invest? Because interest rates in the US are negative. So they didn't want negative interest rates. So gold is one asset class which has always stood the class of time, right? So that is why they all invested in gold, and that is why you saw gold booming up, right? Oil futures went down, right? So there was just no asset class except for gold. So that's why you saw the gold which shot up. You can also see eventually it will not shoot up so much because now again you've got money coming into the money markets and the debt markets. Yeah, so that is the reason why gold went up, because it is just an attractive asset
Okay.
class. It
Yeah,
still
gold has
continues to
always been
remain.
a safe investment option.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
So we'll take one last question just to wrap it all up.
Sure.
So how do we look at what are the changes in the financial sector that we look at? So how do we see the finance sector emerging? Are there any new trends that are going to catch up? How would the students gear up to the changes forthcoming? So all of them would be looking at placements in a year's or so time. So what could be their takeaway on that?
Right. So one, let me answer it from a technical perspective, and then I'll give you a student's perspective. Right. If you look at the financial sector in India, it's stressed out. Right.
Yeah.
You've got lots of bad loans. You still have old recoveries which are still not happening, and COVID is just going to only accelerate that.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Right. You're going to be seeing even further defaults. NBFCs are going to go down. They're going to become, some of the companies may even become bankrupt. Right. But the positive side is the government has taken note of it, and there's lots of capital infusion which is happening through the RBI into all of these banks, right? So there is going to be lots of liquidity which is going to come into the banks, right? And definitely the banks will not, shut down. One recent example I can tell you, you would have all seen what happened to the S Bank, right? S Bank suddenly, they had lots of default because of the commercial paper which they had issued went bad. But again, the government stepped in and ensured that the bank doesn't fail, right? So all said and done, the banks are never going to go out of business. They're going to be there because you need somebody to bank with, right? So financial sector, according to my view, technically, if you look at it from the government spend and from the economic side, yes, it's in bad shape. But in terms of employment or in terms of growth, I don't think that's going to get impacted at all. They will continue to recruit. And in fact, as I was saying earlier, they're going to be only new banks like neobanks which are going to emerge, which are actually going to define the future banking industry. And one very interesting space which you can all look into is fintech, right? Fintech is actually the future which is coming up. So don't look out only for those blue chip companies for employment. If you find a startup which is interesting, that's where you're going to be learning, right? Try to get into a startup. It's okay. I mean, just be there for 2-3 years. Just go through the experience. And believe me, those 2 or 3 years of experience are going to be there through your life, right? Why I'm saying this is sort of my personal experience. I actually started off in a startup called Industry. And those 2 years of experience still help me till date to get an all-rounded view of the business and to actually know what the nuts and bolts of the businesses are. So given an opportunity, I would strongly recommend for all of you to actually work in startups and not get into the multinationals. The multinationals, you can still do it after your startup stint. But if you definitely want to learn, this is the place to be, right? Yeah.
Absolutely, totally agree with you, Narasimhan, on that. We're done with our Q&A session. Thank you very much for your patience in answering all our queries.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And I would like to conclude the session by handing over the dais to our Dean, Dr. Bindu Nabia. All over to you, ma'am.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Narasimhan. Such a pleasure to hear you out. And I must say, it was such an enriching session. I really, really like the way you took the transit. I mean, I like the caption of get your hygiene right, and the way you spoke about preserving capital, focusing on clarity, and building back slowly and getting ready to innovate. It really is an eye opener, I should say, even for people who have been listening to webinars back to back. So thanks a lot for that very insightful session, Mr. Narasimhan. It was really, really good.
Thanks a lot.
And again, coming from somebody like you who has been in the industry, who's looked up to, and you telling the young students that Atmanirbhar Bharat is what we can really look forward to. And, focusing on the fact that there, though there is COVID and there are certain challenges we would face, your own example of how you started your career, I think that's a really nice way to, put the point across to young students. I'm sure the young minds listening to this are all now geared up, and they hopefully will start seeing opportunities among all the confusion that's happening. So I must say, it's a very wholesome, enriching session that you have given us, Mr. Narasimha. I really wanted you to address my students, and I'm glad that today it is not just my students, so also students from across institutions who have joined us today. My special thanks are due to today's faculty moderator, Mrs. Nupur. She's done a fantastic job as always, and
Thanks
the
a lot.
entire team.
Thank you, ma'am.
And the entire team, they have done really well. The support team, my backbone, my faculty team, the student coordinators, fabulous coordination. And to each one of the participants who have joined in today, I'm sure you all have gained with this insights that you have listened to today. Thank you so much, Mr. Narasimhan, again, and we'll definitely look forward to bringing you over to the campus at least once, maybe once everything is normal. Thank you so much for the session.
Thanks
Thank
a
you,
lot.
Nupur.
Thanks a lot for your kind words, and thanks to everybody. Thanks a lot, Nupur, for having to bear with me for so long. Thank you. Thank you.
I think the
pleasure.
student
Thank you,
coordinator
ma'am.
will take over.
Thank you, Srinivas sir, for your valuable words. And I hope it has added value to each one of the participants. Thank you, Bindu ma'am, our dean, for giving us this opportunity. And special thanks to our faculty moderator, Nupur ma'am. And thank you to all the participants as the faculty members from different colleges who have given their precious time for this webinar. Thank you to all. As mentioned earlier, that we are having a webinar of 4 sessions. Today was the second day. Tomorrow we'll be having a third session, which will be on creative innovation as emerging culture, which will be taken by Dr. Saji Gopinath. I believe that same support will be given by all the participants for the further webinars also. So thank you all and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.